What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Elevate Your Grind, brought to you by the Cannabis Lab. I'm your host, Todd Rosales, and it's lovely to be here today. I hope everybody had a very, very happy holiday, whether it's Christmas or Kwanzaa or Hanukkah or whatever made-up holiday that you might want to celebrate. I hope everybody had a great new year and everybody is back into the thick of things. This is our first episode for the new year. I'm very excited to get going again. Looking forward to what 2024 has to offer. So our first guest of the year, I'm excited about this conversation. It's been a while since we've had a testing lab on the show. I know there's a lot of stuff going on with cannabis and then all the alternative crap that's out there too. I think we can get into because I don't love that stuff. I don't love the processes around it, but obviously I think testing is the number one reason why we all push for legality in the cannabis industry. So without any further ado, please welcome Harry Behzadi from Accuscience Labs. Harry, thanks for joining me, man.
Oh, thank you very much, Todd. Thanks for having me
Of
today.
course, man. I happy to have it. Happy to continue to introduce folks to the ever expanding cannabis landscape in Florida. So, I know early on in Florida, we there wasn't much in the way of labs here, and obviously there's only 22 people who can actually produce product here, but they're producing a significant amount. How long have you got, when did you guys enter the Florida market for testing here?
We started in 2020, actually. I am a analytical chemist. I'm a PhD analytical chemist. I've been doing analytical chemistry for the last 35 years. I'm a veteran of the environmental testing, and I basically uh, manage one of the environmental labs all over the country, uh, all over from California to Hawaii to Alaska. About 4 years ago, and hearing through my kids, actually, and their friends, about cannabis, and I started digging into it, and I said, wow, this is like a wild, wild west. You need an adult in the room, basically.
You sure do.
So, so I decided, and I was traveling at that time. I was the VP of one of these uh, uh, global company, traveling all the time. I said, oh, it's time for me to start, paying back what I have learned, and I believe on the product. And I said, I'm going to start my own cannabis lab. I lived always. I lived in the last 30 years. I lived in Orlando, and through my careers, I was traveling all over. So, and I heard that, Lake County actually from Ocala to Apopka is the golden. They call it the golden triangle of cannabis, actually. So I said, decided, okay, I'm going to open up a lab in Eustis, Florida, and nobody had heard about Eustis, Florida, basically, and it's a beautiful, city by the lake. And I started a lab here about 4 years ago. And I gotta tell you though, in the beginning, uh, for somebody who was at the executive level, I had to get back on the bench to come up with a lot of these methodologies. A lot of these methodologies that you use for testing, uh, it's not published, or there's nothing there. So it was fun getting back on the bench, basically, and creating the laboratory that you see today. And I'm so proud of it. And if this is going to be the last thing I do for my career, and I'm glad I could have a lasting impact.
So that's always something fun to see is when kids get their parents into drugs. You know what I mean? Um,
Yeah, exactly.
but so no, that's good. It's funny that they call it the triangle there. I don't know why this industry loves triangles. We have the Emerald Triangle. We've got the triangle down here. It's more of a straight line, but you're 100% correct. The majority of the grows in this state happen to be in that area. And by the way, I've lived in the state of Florida. Let's see, I moved when I was 8 years old, about 20 years now. And I didn't, oh crap, almost 30 years now. I'm off by 10. That's terrible math. See, I couldn't work for you. It's math doesn't work. Um, you know, I didn't know how beautiful it is up there. You've got you have all the lakes up there. You've got a bunch of cultivations up there, but you have all these like little kind of small lake villages. And you would think like going through the middle of the state, like what would look like a Walmart in some places is a Tractor Supply Co. And you would think like, oh, this must be the sticks. There's a place in Mount Dora, Florida, actually. It is a restaurant called Wave. I was taken there by one of the cultivations. It is one of the best sushi restaurants I've ever been to in my life. Now you walk in and it kind of almost has like a diner vibe to it, but the food, the presentation is amazing. And it's such a great area of the state. So I think it's a perfect location for you to set up shop with all those cultivations there. So now you're breaking into the state of Florida. We've got 22 licenses. You've got two labs at the time that were probably dominating the state because, if they split it 50-50, it's 11 each. And I'm sure there's enough business to go around. How do you start attacking the market when you open your doors? I mean, I think the one thing I love hearing you say is you're scientist, chemist by trade. You went back to the bench to figure out the processes instead of just taking somebody else's model and replicating it. So, how do you start attacking the market being the new person on the block?
Well, first of all, let me tell you, I totally agree with you that Florida is beautiful. Through my career, the last 20, 25 years, I travel all over Florida, but always taking the highways, going to Tallahassee or Pensacola, always taking the highways. But through this job, and I've been involved going to different MMTCs or doing the sampling and all that, usually taking the country roads. It's a beautiful state.
It is.
I totally agree with you. So going back to your question, basically is that, you know, when we started, it takes, first of all, I gotta give credit to the OMU. We got one of the best regulatory agencies in the country when it comes to the cannabis. Actually, it took us almost a year to get our certification. We had to, obviously after we set up all the methodologies, we have to go get our ISO certification and then go to the process to get the certified by OMU. And after we started, now I said, okay, let's open up the floodgates. And it wasn't like that. From previous experience on environmental, we had select, clients. We could go there, knock on the door. Well, you go try to go to MMTCs. There is nobody there. They don't even let you in. So you have to play at who is on the who is responsible. So it has been challenging, I could say, and I gotta tell you that is not correct though. I mean the work is not distributed equally. That's
No.
why it is not. I wish it was like that. That's why for us, for the business to survive, I had to, jump in all these different products, to make sure that the business survives till we get more MMTCs, licenses, and hopefully recreational goes into effect. But I wish I could say the work is, distributed evenly, but it's not even close.
No, it's definitely not. It's interesting. Testing always kind of gets put under the radar, and I want to talk about all the different things you test in the house and the what you're seeing in the market. Definitely want to get into your views. But when you look at testing in general, it gets a bad rap, especially in the state, because everyone thinks that the cannabis companies are essentially just looking to pump out the highest THC numbers. Now, for some reason, in the state of Florida, that doesn't seem to matter as much. But elsewhere, you can command a higher dollar value for a higher THC strain just for a quality standpoint. Those are the people who really understand that THC percentage really doesn't directly coincide with quality or even how stoned you'll get. But I, even as somebody who knows about that, have found myself from time to time looking at strains. Just recently, 710 went through this where they released four strains at a great discount over the holiday break that were testing between 13 and 17%. And I've heard a lot of people talk trash about it. Having said that, I bought a half ounce of one of each of those strains, and they are phenomenal. They are very flavorful. They taste great. The effects are phenomenal. So, you know, are there labs in the state like you're not they're not required to use you specifically. So how do you maintain integrity while still, you know, winning new business? Because I imagine that's very important to the MMTCs. Like I've heard behind the scenes, I won't call anybody out, like and MMTC having a serious problem with one of the testing facilities because like all our shit's testing low as can be. We don't understand what's going on.
You're 100% correct on that. And I come again, I've been dealing with this thing in my career for the last 30 or 35 years. The same thing with environmental lab. They always like to go to the lab has that, report them, I'll call it ND lab, not detected lab, because they couldn't find anything. And through the years, I worked, you know, in all these federal government, all the DoD sites. And I always told them that when you work for the DoD, you report to the higher authority. So I had a very stringent ethics training, and I brought that the same thing here. Todd, we don't let anybody walk into the lab, get into the lab, and we hire somebody unless they go through the ethics training. And it is very spelled out, basically. What could you do wrong? What could you do wrong, right? And this is very important to us. Actually, before I get on this call, I had a call with a couple of attorneys. Basically, this problem is rampant. This
Mm-hmm.
THC inflation is rampant. I've been told I've been dumped by a couple of MMTCs because my THC level wasn't high enough.
Mm-hmm.
So what I did is I went and I got on the bench. We tried everything, and it says the THC is it stays it's the same. So as I mentioned earlier to you, we are DEA certified. So AOAC has a PT program actually that it is being run outside the state, and only the lab with the DEA license, actually, we have to get Form E20 222 from the DEA. And I said, and that's the real sample, actually, real samples that you smoke, basically, real flower, PT
Okay.
samples. And we were able to get those samples, and we tested. And guess what? We aced it. I mean, I'm not going to say we passed it, we aced it. The number was 13.4, we get 13.2. So, and I tell everybody that tells me that your THC level is low. I said, no, the other lab THC level is wrong,
Yeah.
basically, because I am confident on my numbers now. So this is what I have to deal with. And I just don't understand why people care about, as you said, when you smoke this thing, 95% of it, you blow it back. Basically, why do you need high THC? We started doing, the terpenes are so important. Actually, we are one of the only few labs in the state that we do analyze for flavonoids. We are pushing that, actually. I just recently got in contact with the Israeli company, actually, that they were inquiring us about flavonoids. I did a presentation last year on the Cannabis Science Conference on the flavonoids. The flavonoids, that's another thing that you're going to see a lot. You're going to hear a lot about that, about the flavonoid. The
People are just
connoisseurs,
now wrapping their head around terpenes, and you're trying to get us into flavonoids now. So, like,
yeah.
so real quick before we go too deep here, when an MMTC, and I want to stick on medical cannabis right now. It's just I want to get into the D8 and all that other stuff. I'm selfish on the stuff that I like.
That,
What are you when someone sends you a sample, what are you testing for? Like when I look at a COA, and I should say I should be more educated than I am. I know a lot of it. I'll look for cannabinoid count. I can't see all of them. I'll look at the THC levels, make sure there's no garbage in it. But like, what exactly are you testing for in general from both a good and bad standpoint?
one of the most important things, Todd, is the pesticides. The pesticide, and I did a presentation 2 years ago in a cannabis science conference on the pesticide. And the pesticides are very important. I get a little bit of detail about that. Pesticides are very hard to detect on the cannabis, especially as the concentration goes higher. We did some study, some research here, and to be honest with you, we were actually seeing the result of the pesticide. If you run it without a dilution, basically, you find not detected, and you could have very high concentration of pesticide in the samples. So we came up with a solution how we could, identify the pesticide. And in Florida, it doesn't matter you use pesticide or not in the MMTCs. If your neighbor or they're spraying pesticide in the farms around you, you're gonna find that pesticide in MMTC. You're gonna find it on your flowers.
Really?
Besides pesticide, we test oh yeah, absolutely. And I'll be honest with you, I did some forensic for some MMTC, and as I walked in there, and they had a pesticide issue. As I walked there, and they were changing the filters on the air conditions, and I said, "What are you doing that? What are you doing with that thing?" So we were dumping it in the dumpster. So now I take that. So we brought it into the lab. We took the pieces, we analyzed them, and we find a lot of pesticide that they had the issue with it, basically. These are the same pesticide that they had basically on the flowers. So you're going to find the pesticide. Pesticide is a huge issue there. Then Eastern mold, microbial. We tested for Eastern mold and microbial. We tested for mycotoxin, metals. Metals, the cannabis plant, they are notorious for sucking up the metals, especially the heavy metals from the soil. Actually, back in Chernobyl, if you remember, there was a huge problem with the metals. And for remediation, they used a cannabis plant to suck up all the metals, basically. And obviously, after that, they destroyed it. I don't know what the Russians did with it, or maybe they smoked it. But what they did, so the metals is a huge issue with that. We do it for the water content, moisture, percent moisture, and the terpenes they get tested too. And in case of the uh, vapes and edible, we also are tested for residual solvent because they use the solvent for extraction to make sure that they are below the limit.
Yeah, I mean, what are the problems that you're seeing most in the state? I mean, obviously, we talked about THC percentage, but as I understand it, at least early on, PM seems to be running rampant through a lot of these different grows, and it's just, I mean, there's not much you can do about it when we live in a very, very humid state.
No, there isn't not much you could do about that. But again, you have to make sure that there are different MMTCs that are dealing with it differently. Some of them they fill up with the nitrogen basically. So the containers they're filling up with the nitrogen, so the air is not there, so it doesn't the yeast and mold cannot grow. So again, I see the biggest issue is a pesticide, and there is a possibility that the lab is testing it. It's not finding the right pesticide, the amount of pesticide there. So there are different techniques with that, and we have until we have a standardized method that the government can issue that like an environmental basically, we have to deal with that.
Yeah. How much do you work with the folks after testing as far as helping them remediate, or is it just kind of pass the results and
So
send us the next one?
basically, if they have an issue, on different issues, it depends on them. If they call us, we'd be happy to help them with the, helping where where is it coming basically from. Again, another case I could talk to you about it is another MMTC. They had a pesticide, they had some vapes. They failed for pesticide. And after they failed, they said, "Where is this coming from? We are not using any kind of pesticide." And it was so we walked there and we took some wipe samples. And I told them, "Don't tell me what pesticide." They were not using us. Tell you the
Yeah.
truth, they were not using us. I told him, what kind of, don't tell me what pesticide. So we took some wipe samples. We took it from the exhaust fan, actually, some wipe sample from the exhaust fan, and we tested it. And we find pesticide there. And I send them the results. I say, is that the pesticide you're looking for? You had the issue with? I says, yes. Where did you find that? I said, on the exhaust fan, actually. So the air was coming from one side, it was getting exhausted from the other side, and we find that pesticide on the exhaust fan, on the blades,
Wow.
actually.
So basically, the air conditioning is sucking in the pesticide from the air from the other farms around and
Yeah,
putting it through the HVAC system, huh?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Jesus. That is not something I ever thought anybody would have to deal with. But it makes total sense having to set up that real sterile environment on the inside. And that's crazy to think of. That's the level of detail that you have to go to. But now, so not only in addition to testing product, but you have the ability to test the different entry exit points, and see if there are any contaminants within their systems or accoutrements for growing too.
Yeah, and I gotta tell you though, after 3 years in this business, we're going to the fourth year now. It is changing, Todd. This is not your old underground growing marijuana anymore. This is becoming highly, highly scientific, actually. You know, from the growing, from making tissue culture, from genetics. This is becoming very scientific. And don't be surprised that the organ is going to be, turn more scientific. One of the things I think you are going to start seeing having some food supplement actually added to your edibles. So when you get high, it's good for you. You get your vitamin C too at the same time. So, so don't be surprised,
So
you know,
So how do we start? How do we start with that being, kind of nutraceuticals and cannabis combined? How do we start testing and regulating that stuff?
Oh, the same thing, again, we, as a laboratory, we are developing that in nutraceuticals actually, because, this is not something that you can send it to another lab to be tested. You have 6 or 7 laboratories in the state. You decide to start having nutraceuticals in your product. You need to test it. The labs could handle that thing. They are allowed to handle it, basically.
Well, I hope so because I'm unfortunately the state of Florida seems to be stifled with innovation because they don't have to be, right? Like there's only 22 people who produce product. You don't need to be like California where you have thousands upon thousands of people putting out different things. And also obviously the regulations kind of limit the type of products that you can and can't make. Let's go outside medical cannabis for a little bit because I know you guys test other kind of plant medicine as well as nutraceuticals. Let's talk about, hemp and was it is I don't even remember Delta 8 at this point and those what are you seeing as far as like the non-weed weed products that are out there? Are they safe? Is this something that people should be like? I know it's kind of hard for
Oh
you to
boy,
say
don't.
being they have a lot of clients, but like, what are we looking at with these products? And I'll be first and foremost and say, I don't like it. I feel like it's a way to skirt the rules. I feel like, and I don't know if those folks are required to test their products. I feel like a lot of them don't, or try to fugazi it a little bit. And that industry scares the shit out of me because we see headlines someone smoked weed and it caused psychosis and turned out it was Delta 8. It was an actual Delta 9 THC that they got from a dispensary, whether recreational or medical. So that stuff scares me because I feel like it's going to take down the THC side of the industry with it.
So, Todd, one of the things I'm coming up with actually a presentation, and I call it a cannabis product liability. Is your product, if I'm talking about efficacy, safety, and legality? Is it, is it effective? Is it safe? And is it legal? Let's talk about legality first. I have a lot of stories. We don't have enough time to tell you that. I have a lot of stories to tell you that, the farmers, they bring, or people are bringing their samples, they get it tested for Delta 8. Obviously, we want to test it. We tested for Delta 8, and we find that there is 2%, delta 9 there. And I sent the results back, and it says there's no way. I got a COA from another lab outside the state. It says there is no delta 9 there. I said, could you send that to me? Yeah. And they sent me the chromatogram. The COA has the chromatogram, actually. That's the instrument that we analyze the sample. And I could see the delta 9 peaks there, basically. And I said, you see that peak there? That's delta 9. That's about 2%. It is very hard to actually convert CBD or delta 9 to delta 8 THC and have no delta 9. You have to go through a lot of purification, basically. So one of the first thing I get hit is that I'm not going to send you guys samples anymore because you detected delta 9. I can't sell this thing now. So, well, don't kill the messenger, basically. So that the delta 9 is a huge issue, and so that's the legality of the product. Then on the safety part, and I gotta tell you, 90% of the delta 8 samples we get in this place, they're not asking for any of the safety parameters. Not pesticide, no metals, no microbial, and these are being sold basically all over the internet, everywhere. So your medical marijuana is much, much safer than delta 8, and this thing goes through the chemical process. You're using chemical to convert these things, so using a lot of chemicals basically. So it's a huge issue there, and I hope the FDA come up with some kind of regulations. The government, they got to do something, and the farm bill close that loophole. I don't know what they're going to do, but my thing is get it tested. Test it for safety, test it for efficacy, test it for legality, and don't kill the messenger.
Yeah, no, I mean that's terrible when people they get upset at the labs for just exposing what the truth of the product is. And I said it before you started talking. I don't love that industry because I feel like it's a bunch of people that want to get into the cannabis industry, but they don't feel like playing by the rules. And now, granted, cannabis has been that for a century, but there is a path to legality. And when I see the folks coming out of Sacramento, the folks like David Polly and the folks like Caleb Counts and Ted Leidy, and they, came from that gray market and they decided to get licensed and do it the right way. Well, I have respect for them. And I think that's the model that people should be following. If you want to continue to break the rules by putting people in danger, like that's not cool to me. If there is a way that they can put safe tested product out and followed all the rules and everything else like that, but like, you know, getting high off a chemical you're getting high off a chemical reaction regardless, but like spraying it with delta 9 or any of that stuff just to make it kind of like weed, like we've seen problem with that forever. And then some of the all this plant med when all of a sudden you have something that's supposed to be life changing for you and it's next to the fucking cash register at a gas station in the middle of fucking nowhere, like I have a hard time believing that.
And be honest with you, as a president of a company, a lab, and I'm saying that without no hesitation, my ethics is being challenged every day. I gotta
Yeah.
tell you, I mean, it's not easy to break the bad news to the customers. And I had customers, and basically they spent a lot of money. Uh, they had, they planted the hemp, they cured it, and then they got the Delta 8 from another company outside the state. So that was a lot of expenses they have gone through. And basically, if they're ethical and they said, okay, this fails, I cannot sell it now, or take
Yeah.
it to another lab who give them the right answer, basically. And then it's very easy. And I tell you how they do it. It's very easy. The instrument, linearity is about 100 parts per million. So when you have a wave of delta 8 at 80%, you have to dilute the sample 1,000 times. So when you dilute the samples the 1,000 times, your limit of quantitation for delta 9 is going to increase by 1,000 times too. So they report ND and they keep the limit of the quantitation the same. So it is, they report on the COA that Delta 9 THC is less than 0.9%, 0.3%. So, and I felt sorry for some of these farmers that they are spending all that money, and then some of them, they have to basically dump it.
Yeah. It is nuts, but it's I don't know what's gonna happen in the industry. Like I was okay with the whole CBD thing when it was supposed to be a nutraceutical and it was supposed to be the diet weed that didn't get you high. What are you seeing as far as the other plant medicines out there? If I remember correctly, you told me you're testing psychedelics as well too. The psychedelic world is a little bit much more of a controlled environment, but are you seeing a lot of people doing the right thing? Do you see people trying to skirt the rules? Like, what are you seeing in that? Because I think that's the industry that we look at as kind of hand in hand with cannabis right now.
And let me tell you something. First of all, this is just the beginning. We are going to be seeing a lot more plant-based, whatever you want to call it, drugs or whatever you want to call
Hmm.
it. The other one is a kratom. We started testing kratom here about 6 or 8 months ago. And I gotta tell you, basically very few. I mean, you've seen the articles that what's happening to people taking unknown amount of the kratom. We get very few clients that they send us samples to be just tested for the amount of the mid concentration, which is very important. Forget about the safety. Yeah, we have one or two clients who send us for the safety product, but forget about safety. That's another one. There are more products coming every day. They are coming up, but again, you know, please get it tested, and the margin on these things. You said you go to a gas station and you see these things. It's not cheap.
No.
You know, spending a couple of dollars on every product for testing and making sure that the product is safe is nothing. Don't be greedy.
But that's how I always felt. Like we have these industries that are emerging. People are skeptical about them already. And, to me, safety is the number one concern. Do you really want to contribute to the reason? Like, if you invest in a business, whether it's kratom, whether it's psychedelics, whether it's cannabis, and you want to try to make a quick buck, you're jeopardizing the long term of your business. It may not just be you, but if you help, turn a black eye to the community, like it's all not going to be around for us to participate anymore because you're putting unsafe product out there. Like that was one of the number one point. That's the number one points that politicians and going back to medical cannabis or recreational cannabis, whatever you want to call it, the number one point that politicians put out there, Ron DeSantis, as much as I love him, is, oh, you have this fentanyl laced weed. And it's like, that shit's not coming from the dispensaries. It's like, if first of all, it's probably most people say it's a myth to begin with. There is not fentanyl laced weed out there. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't, it doesn't it doesn't complement the cannabis high. And if there is, we all know it's not like fentanyl is used to cut stuff to make it last longer. It's not used like, oh, we're going to take a bunch of this weed and spray fentanyl on it. It doesn't make any sense. But whatever. If it's out there, it might be out there. I don't know. That's not coming from the dispensary. The whole point of legalizing cannabis for medical or even adult use was to say, hey, we're making sure your product is safe. Now, obviously, is there corruption in different labs and elsewhere and everything else? Maybe. We don't know for sure. I'm sure there is. But at the end of the day, at least it is being tested. And there are plenty of people out there like yourself with the right integrity that's making sure that safe products getting out onto the street. So my point with this being is I don't understand why people would argue against testing or try to skirt testing when they know that's the best way to say, I have the safer product. I have the best product. I have the most natural product. I have the cleanest product. I've never seen someone tout. I've seen people tout the THC percentage and the cannabinoid percentage of their COA. I've never once had someone come through and say, this is the cleanest weed we've ever put on the fucking street. And I don't
Yeah.
know why.
Yeah, and you're right to the point, and that's another reason, Todd, is to everybody help to get the recreational pass. Maybe people, because this is the safest we have. We have a good OMMU. They have a good control of the product. The product comes out of dispensaries are good. You could debate the THC, but it's safe, you know. So it is very important to get that recreational pass. So everybody have access to it, so they don't have to go to the gas station and buy something that you don't know if it is safe, if it's going to kill you, what's going to do to you in the long term.
No, I agree. I mean, that's why I got my card to begin with. When they passed smokable flower, I'm like, I want to make sure I know what I'm smoking is safe. I remember right before we got to the dispensary thing, I got my first vape pen. And I remember the first vape pens I got, I bought from a guy, and I'm just like, I just don't feel good about this. Like, I don't trust. I had a friend who did extraction early on in his house, and like I knew that guy and I didn't believe that he was being clean with it. And like, you don't know what's going into it. And then people tell me when you do the concentration of the weed, it concentrates everything in it. And it scared the shit out of me. Um, Harry, I know we're getting towards the end here, but let's talk about the consumers, right? If you're a consumer and you are shopping, whether it's dispensaries or alternative plant medicine products, how can you try to make sure that what you're buying is good, it's safe? What are we looking for in COAs? If you're giving recommendation to a new patient, what should they be looking for when they're shopping?
Actually, in the previous call, I was talking, there are organizations, actually, they're coming, and they are going to start actually validating the COAs, and making sure the COA, we're going one step further, actually.
Let me ask you a quick question. Are COAs standard, or does every lab kind of come up with their own?
Well, the OMU has requirement that every COA has to have these parts.
Okay.
So that is as far as but each lab has their own COA. First of all, you're going to make sure that all this everything is passed. All the pesticide, mycotoxins, and microbial, everything passed, and then demand the COA. I mean, my son has a medical marijuana license. And I said, get the COA. I said, what is a COA? So we need to educate them, demand the COA, basically, have the COA. I think the state is going to come up with QR code soon. I hope they come. So you can scan that when you buy a product, and you could see that your COA on your cell phone, basically. So there is a lot we still need to do, and there is it's very important that they have that seal of approval of the COA for validation. I think that is going to be the next thing they're going to start looking at, to make sure you know uh, you're getting the right product. As a consumer, I said the first thing I need, make sure that you request the COA.
Very cool. I think that is invaluable information. Harry, before I let you go, how can people find you? How can people work with you?
You could look for the AccuscienceLabs.com and go to our website. We have a great website, and there are ways to, you could reach us. We are going to be actually launching online sample submission forms, so that you could even send your sample and send your all your information through online. And stay tuned. We're gonna have a lot more science coming up.
I love the science
You're
of the
gonna see
plant.
flavonoids. You're gonna see terpenes. You're gonna see a lot of more different things.
And
We're
definitely
just warming up.
check out the AccuScience blog on their website. I think there's a ton of great information there. Um, looking, great meeting you. I really appreciate the conversation. I look forward to hopefully meeting you in person in an upcoming Cannabis Lab event.
But definitely, thank you.
Absolutely.
Thanks for
Harry,
having me.
of course. Thank you so much. And
And
thank you to
Happy New Year.
everybody. Happy New Year. And thank you to everybody at home for watching. This has been another episode of Elevate Your Grind. If you want to check out anything C-Lab related, you can check us out at joinclab.com. Of course, if you missed any part of this interview, you'd like to watch it again, you can find us at youtube.com/elevate your grind, or you can download it anywhere you find your podcast. Folks, it's been another episode of Elevate Your Grind, and we will see you next time.